Augmented and virtual reality have become household terms over the past few years, as more and more devices have come out offering one of these technologies at increasingly competitive prices. Asus now has the first device made to offer both, and do so under $700, all while still just being a phone. Meet the Zenfone AR by Asus. Packed with near flagship level specs and a wealth of goodies inside, we examine whether this latest Zenfone is a flagship contender or pretender. Asus's latest Zenfone is a rather plain-looking device from the front, an all-black slab with only the company's silver name and front-facing camera interrupting the color scheme. The fingerprint scanner is a slightly raised, clickable button, which we found to cheapen the otherwise solid build with its loud, firm clicks. We hope Asus will soon jump on board the fixed sensor/home button trend. Apart from this, the sturdy build of the device continues with the Zenfone's thicker, rounded aluminum edges and satisfyingly clicky volume and power buttons, which are also made of metal and micro-etched to provide more tactile feedback. The back shows a modest step up in style with its burnished leather casing and cluster of potent optics. Encased in a raised aluminum block, the sensors themselves are just slightly recessed, while the block itself has a slight curvature, as the back of the phone does. Even with this chunk of serious hardware, the back maintains a casual, yet classy design. The Zenfone Super AMOLED display delivers vivid colors that are pleasing to look at. Though it leans slightly toward the bluish side, this tendency goes mostly unnoticed. It does, however, become more prominent when tilting the phone. If you're looking at the phone at anything less than a perfectly parallel angle, then you'll see a blue tint immediately overtake the screen. Poor viewing angles aside, the 2560 by 1440 WQHD resolution produces 512 pixels per inch, a great tool for conveying detail. Zen UI is largely unchanged, even from its previous build on Android Marshmallow. Still offering deep customization and a dedicated theme store, the interface allows users to change grid sizing, icon fonts, folder configurations, and much more. Of course, with these plentiful options comes plenty of menus, which are sometimes redundant and are hard to keep track of. The feeling that you haven't seen all the menus on this device is a pervasive one, even if you're pretty sure you have. We do like other Asus software like ZenMotion, which allows you to draw a letter on the screen to launch a specific app. While we appreciate features like this and the ability to tweak and theme, perhaps advanced and simple settings options, as well as intuitive and effective search within the settings menu would alleviate the UI's sometimes overwhelming nature. Using the device is a fluid and quite swift experience. Powered by the Snapdragon 821 and either 6 or 8 GB of RAM, this should hardly come as a surprise. Multitasking is effortless, and swapping apps in dual screen produces almost no stutter. The device gets warm easily though, even with very basic usage. Using the camera heats up the back and edges of the device quite noticeably, while VR and AR use will get the hottest. This is a bit of a worry for the Zenfone's continued performance and reliability over time. Nevertheless, VR and AR performance was solid, showing capability not just in the hardware, but Google's developing software as well. AR applications like Lowe's or Wayfair's were useful and fun to use for home decorating. In fact, all of the 35 Tango-enabled apps were fun, though some had more defined use cases than others. Some glitches did exist in some of the newer AR apps, but all seemed to be related to the software. Apps like the BMW Visualizer left us daydreaming of future AR applications. The camera continues with the theme of Zen UI, and the name of the game here is Options. Luckily, the camera interface is more well thought out, dare we say even beautifully so. Manipulating the deepest and to some most obscure image settings can be done easily between shots, thanks to the use of a small organized pop-up menu. Shooting modes are also plentiful, and even customizable within their menu layout. The manual shooting mode goes beyond regular pro modes, not just offering the typical ISO, white balance, aperture, etc., but also adding a histogram to view exposure, light metering modes, an electronic level, and a good deal more. Shooting in this mode will truly make you feel like a pro. You also have shooting modes which include those specifically for low light, a super resolution mode capable of 92 megapixel photos, and of course a depth of field mode for bokeh effects. Unfortunately, results from this mode are mostly disappointing. At its best, the subject will be outlined with a halo of non-blurred background surrounding it, while the rest of the background is blurred. More often than not though, blur will be applied to parts of your subject that ultimately render the picture useless. Sometimes just faces will be clear, with your entire subject's body blurred, or a blur will be inexplicably applied to various parts of your subject. Pictures taken of people, pets, and objects all produce these same results, or even worse. Pretty disappointing execution on this feature. Regular image quality wasn't much better. Though details came out sharp from this 23 megapixel sensor, colors were often bluish and pale. Rarely would a shot have near perfect color. While not the worst offender of discoloration, you can certainly do better in and even below this price point. HDR did show a high proclivity for pulling out colors and detail from darkness, though the same cannot be said for its adeptness in bright areas, or its prowess in balancing a scene that contains both. Videos also portrayed sharp detail and adeptness with low light areas. Optical image stabilization does a great job of keeping things smooth here, though autofocus seemed almost completely absent when presented with a closer object. There was also some tendency for the phone to fluctuate a bit with exposure, but other than this, videos were very pleasing to look at. Watching any video on the device is a joy, frankly. While the screen provides rich colors and abundant detail, Asus's custom speaker setup pairs well with high-res audio to produce richer and clearer sound than most phones, especially when connected to headphones. Able to simulate 7.1 surround sound while listening in this mode, plug-and-play sound is pretty good, although not as loud or full as other devices out of the box. Many settings exist to tweak the sound profile to your liking, but better out-of-the-box EQ is needed to compete with other flagships. Calls, on the other hand, came through clearly on the AR, whether it be for the caller or the receiver of the call. Battery life, in a word, is disappointing. Lasting only 5.5 hours in our custom test was no surprise, as getting through a full day of use was a task that required a conscientious effort. Recharge times for the supposedly fast-charging device were also a letdown, taking almost 2 full hours to recharge. Well, that could have gone better. We thought that perhaps the same processor used in the Google Pixel, paired with either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM and a 23 megapixel camera, might be hard to beat. Evidently it's not. Don't get us wrong, it's a very fast performer, blazing speeds in fact, but the operating temperature matches that fire with fire. AR and VR provide fun and run well on this device, but its heating issues are of course at its worst here. As for the camera, it has a lot of potential, but falls short with consistent color accuracy and sometimes even detail capture, not to mention the useless depth of field mode. Then there's that dreadful battery life, which struggles to make it through a full day. Yes, the Zenfone AR is a high-spec phone, but with problematic execution. Perhaps the best metaphor to describe the Zenfone AR is Zen UI itself. We love how much Asus is offering us here, but without proper execution, it's hard to appreciate the full package. Selling for between $600 and $700, you can do better in almost every way. I'm Corey Gaskin with Phone Arena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for our latest reviews.